Hi, this is Jeff Heaton. Welcome to Applications of Deep Neural Networks with Washington University. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a Python environment for the course with Windows. Even if you're not a member of the class, this still shows you how to set up Keras and TensorFlow for use with the Windows operating system. I also have a Macintosh-specific version of this video as well. Of course, this is just part of my entire course on deep learning, so if you're more interested in this sort of thing, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and also click the little bell icon so you receive all the notifications. So this is one of several iterations of this particular video. Google and TensorFlow and Anaconda Python always change something, and I have to keep updating this. So I'm going to try to make this as general as possible and let you know some of the things you might encounter. But I do update this video each semester that I run it, so definitely check back here if you're looking at an older version of this. This is the January 2019 version of this, and I expect this should last for a bit, but there is TensorFlow 2.0 coming out, so we'll see what this entails. Now, sometimes it's a bit painful to install these machine learning packages, and I do apologize for that, but welcome to my world. This is really just how this stuff works. This stuff is all changing at the speed of light, and if you want to be in machine learning, you're going to have to be a bit of a operating system and software tinkerer. I am going to show you how to do this in Microsoft Windows, and I'll probably create a Mac version of this as well, but I'll point out the differences kind of as we go. Now for this one, I have already installed a Python version, Anaconda. I use Anaconda Python. I recommend you do as well. It simplifies some of the installation processes for these complicated machine learning packages like TensorFlow and Keras. I already had a Python installed. You may want to erase your current Python and start over. This is what I'm going to show you how to do real quick. There's two places that Anaconda will typically be installed. It'll either be installed in your user directory or at the root of your C drive, like you see here. I installed it under my user directory, and I recommend that approach. I think that works well. It's also recommended by Anaconda. I'll have links in the description of this video for all of the places that you might want to go. Also, if you want to have an idea of about how long this install will take, notice the time here. I will time-lapse this considerably so that when things are installing, you don't want to sit there watching a YouTube video for 10 minutes while something downloads, depending on how fast that would be. So let's go ahead. I am going to go into my users directory. That is me. Lots of stuff in my users directory, but if you go down to Anaconda 3, that is where it was installed. I'm simply going to nuke that. Now be careful before you do that. If you have other software on your computer that installed that for you, just be aware of what you're doing there. You may want to install it into a different directory. If this is all you're doing on Python and you're comfortable with that, like me, I'm glad to rip out my Python, throw in a new one. I'll deal with the consequences from there. But if you've already got Python installed, just be aware you could run into some version issues. So I'm going to delete that. This might take some time, so this is our first time lapse. And now I am Pythonless. So let's go ahead and get Python installed. There's two flavors of Python that you can deal with: Anaconda and Miniconda. I recommend Miniconda. Simply Google search for Miniconda and click on the link. Miniconda has just the minimum of Python installed. You'll have to pip install the rest of the things that you will commonly need, but it's so much smaller and cleaner. I prefer just to install what I need. The class instructions assume that you're doing Miniconda. So here's the problem that we have for this semester. Now this might be completely different at the time that you're viewing this. So look at the description for the video, look at the pinned comment near the top. I'll always give you a clue as far as what might have changed with this, and if it changes considerably, obviously I just record a new video, in which case there'll be a link to that new video. So here we have Python 3.7. A few weeks before the class started, 3.6 was here, so that's fine. It's the latest version of Python, but TensorFlow requires Python 3.6. Again, welcome to the world of machine learning. Welcome to Python packages in general. So what we're going to do here is download the 64-bit of Python 3.7. I recommend just getting the latest version of Miniconda. We could go into the archive and find 3.6, but let's just march forward and I'll show you how to create a 3.6 environment once we have it installed. So you would click this to download it. Now, I already did this because that can potentially take a little bit depending on how your connection speed is. Let's go ahead and install that. I'm going to go to the downloads directory where I have that. And don't worry about that other file. Let's go ahead and run this. This is what I downloaded. Okay, you can click next, agree. So this is where, if you pick just me, it's going to install in your user directory. If you choose all users, then it is going to install in your root. I recommend doing just me. You can do either one, but you do need special privileges if you're going to do the second one. This is where it's going to install it. Now, if you are leaving an old version in here, you'll give this something different. But this is going to install Miniconda 3. Now, I deleted Anaconda, so I had Anaconda installed previously. Anaconda is just the big, full-blown everything. I prefer more minimalistic, so let's go ahead and do this. Next. This is important. So you can add Anaconda to your path environment variable. If you do that, whenever you go to DOS, basically it's going to run this Anaconda. Now, this is typically what I do. But again, I'm pretty familiar in advance with Python, so I'm willing to deal with the consequences. The problem you would run into is if there's other software installed in your machine that is using other versions of Python installed on here, that could get you into trouble. We're going to go ahead and do the default installs for this. So I am not going to add it to the path, and we are going to register it as the default one. The only thing is, when you run your Anaconda, you won't run it from your DOS prompt. You'll run it rather from the Anaconda prompt that you'll get over here that I'll show you shortly. So let's go ahead and click install. This is a pretty quick install. This is what's great about Miniconda. If you did Anaconda, you would be sitting here considerably longer. Although, that being said, let's time lapse. All right, that's done. Let's do next. Okay, now it's installed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the class notes so that you can follow my installation instructions. If you just do a Google search for Jeff space Heaton space Wustl, W-U-S-T-L, that'll take you to this class website, or you can go directly to my GitHub repository. Click on this one, Applications of Deep Learning. This is the course website. There's a link to the GitHub repo right here. All right, you're going to want to download all of these files. You can clone it if you know what you're doing with Get. If you don't, I say just download the zip. We'll deal with that file in a moment. For now, we're mainly interested in the installation instructions that I am going to have you follow from. That is in Module 1. Now, we're just looking at this file in GitHub, so you can't really run anything in Python, but this lets you see the instructions, and you scroll through it, and yeah, that's me. You'll want to get down here where it says Software Installation. We've already done this. We've downloaded Miniconda. This is talking about dealing with this Python 3.7 incompatibility issue. I'll remove this once this is no longer an issue. Probably TensorFlow 2.0 might well resolve this. But for now, what we're going to do is Conda create this. So this is going to create a new environment for you in your Anaconda or Miniconda for Python 3.6. So you'll have a 3.6 environment in your master 3.7 environment. Let me show you what that looks like. So even though you downloaded Miniconda, it still says Anaconda. Kind of annoying, but that's how they do it. You'll want to click on your Anaconda prompt. Don't just open a DOS window. This is your Anaconda prompt. It's basically a DOS prompt. Now, that word base, that's important. That's your environment. You always have a base environment. In my day job and work as a data scientist, I don't use my base environment for anything. It's just sort of a loading area for everything, and I'm going to suggest you do the same here. You need to create a new environment that basically has your Python 3.6. So we're going to just copy and paste this. Always copy and paste. Believe me, this is how I roll. Okay, so you're going to run that. And that takes a moment. And then you just say yes. Okay, you now have a new environment. So notice here it says to activate it, you do conda activate TensorFlow. So I'm going to do that. Now, if you're using a Mac, it's source activate TensorFlow. I usually just do activate TensorFlow. You can use the conda one as well, but that has some additional ramifications to it. I'm just going to do activate or source activate if I'm using a Mac. And notice now this base has changed to TensorFlow. We are now in this new environment. And notice if we type Python version, we are in 3.6.8. If I had done that prior to the activate and when I was in base, it'd be 3.7. So let's go ahead and do the rest of this installation. We're going to do conda install Jupyter. That's Jupyter Notebooks, which is the IDE of sorts that we'll be using for this semester. You can also copy and paste. Proceed. Okay, that was one of the bigger ones, but it's done. So what I'm going to do is drag this DOS window to the side. Okay, now they're side by side. Copy and pasting made easy. So now we need to install each of these. This is also a pretty big one. This is SciPy. Each of these will prompt you. Just say yes. Next is Pandas, and Pandas Data Reader. Matplotlib is important. That gives us access to all of our graphics. Pillow lets us directly manipulate images. And Request lets us access HTTP web services. H5PY lets us read H5 files, which are how Keras stores neural network files. PSUtil gets us information about the operating system. There's really only one example that makes use of it. So if you can't install this one, it doesn't matter. And PSUtil, if you've installed Anaconda instead of Miniconda, this will fail for reasons that I won't go into. If you're curious as to why, ask me in the comments. By the way, I tried to install H5PY twice. If you do that, it'll simply tell you that it's already been installed. So let's install the one I meant to, PSUtil. Okay, now we're down to the two big ones. TensorFlow and Keras. And notice I have the version numbers specified. 1.12 for TensorFlow, which should be the last TensorFlow before going to 2.0. I do this just so that if somebody's installing this later and TensorFlow's upgraded in the middle of the semester, you're going to have the material that the course was updated for. Now, I'll be updating this to TensorFlow 2.0 during the summer of 2019. And if that is a seismic enough shift to the installation process, and it might well be, I will record another video of this. So you'll see probably a pinned comment from me at the very bottom letting you know if there's something you need to do here especially. So you can also remove the double equal, especially if you're not in my class. So if you can just do pip install TensorFlow and it'll install the latest. But I am going to go ahead and do it like this. Now, if a problem in my previous video that people were mentioning having was it would tell them that it couldn't find TensorFlow. The reason for that is they were trying to install TensorFlow into 3.7 Python, and TensorFlow doesn't exist for 3.7 at this point in the time continuum. So it's not found. So if you're seeing a not found error, that's probably what's happening. You have a TensorFlow to Python mismatch. I'll post the latest information on the GitHub and also in the description of this video and probably a pinned comment. So look for those. Let's go ahead and without further ado, let's install TensorFlow. If anything goes wrong, this is where it will. Cross your fingers. And happiness is a TensorFlow install command finishing with no red errors at the bottom. If you had red errors at the bottom, then I suggest copying and pasting those and Googling to see if you can find out what's going wrong. If not, feel free to post into the comments and I'll chime in as I know what to answer for you or tell you where you might want to go for more information. Now, let's install Keras next. By the way, at TensorFlow 2.0 point, Keras and TensorFlow in 2.0 are effectively merging. So if I had to guess what this script will look like when that gets released, is this will change to equals 2.0, 2 point something, and this Keras line will go away. But we'll see what that actually looks like when it happens. Now let's do Keras. That's a little bit quicker. Okay, Keras tends to be less error-prone than TensorFlow. And by the way, this is all for the CPU. If you want to install this on the GPU, there are definitely tutorials to do that. I'm going to do a video to show you how to use Colab to do this, which is Google's web cloud-based product that gives you a really sweet GPU to use with this. But if you think this is complicated, this is easy level compared to GPU. GPU can be a weekend of your life that you will just never, ever get back. Several weekends of my life. Okay, now that we have all of this, let's go ahead and do a quick test. Now, I don't have this in the Jupyter Notebook, but a real quick way that you can test this is just type Python. And now you're in Python. It says Python 3.6. That's a good sign. Do import TensorFlow as TF. Enter. Notice it takes a moment. If you get an error here, then you have some debugging to do. But if you just get this back, you're golden. It's installed. So let's do also print TF dot underbar, underbar. Make sure you do 2 underbars there. Version, underbar, underbar, close parentheses. And if you see that, congratulations, you have TensorFlow installed. Now type quit, and that. Okay, and now we're going to run this last line here. What this line does is makes Jupyter aware of this new environment that you've created for 3.6. So I'm going to copy that, and when we're in Anaconda prompt, we need to make sure that we activate TensorFlow. Always do that to get out of your base and into TensorFlow. And I'm just going to paste that line in and run it. And this basically makes it so that you have Jupyter Hub. You have Jupyter connected to TensorFlow, to that new environment that you've created. We'll see why that's important in just a second. Let's, I've downloaded the files earlier for my course website and from GitHub, and I've unzipped those into this Jeff H directory. You can see that, do a dir command, and you can see it right there. T81558. So we'll change directory into that. Make sure that you download it and unzip it into your C:\users, wherever your folder is. So we're in there. Let's go ahead and launch Jupyter Notebook. And here we are. This is Jupyter Notebook. So Jupyter Notebook always shows you what's in the current directory from where you launched it. So that's why it was so important that we CD'd, change directory into where we want to be. Let's open up Module 1. And we're going to run just something to test that this is available, that we can actually work this correctly. Now, you might see this, kernel not found. Python 3, well, if you choose that, that's going to be base. But notice this new one. That's what the command that I just gave you did. If you just see Python 3, it's not going to work, because that's going to be Python 3.7. So choose that. Make sure you did that command I gave you earlier. Set the kernel. If you see that it can't find your functions like TensorFlow or scikit-learn or missing the libraries, you might be in the wrong kernel. So you can always see what kernel you're in by change kernel. There you see the Python 3 and the Python 3.6 TensorFlow. Always check your kernel and make sure that you have selected Python 3.6. You can also see which one up here at the top right. Let's go ahead and run helpful functions. This is the top of every one of the course modules. We'll run that. And silence is bliss. If it does not give you any output, usually that means it worked. So you'll see a 1 there. If you ran it again, that would change to a 2. It's just the number of times it's been or the kernel number that it's run, or the script number. We'll scroll down further. Python versions. Notice this is the output from when I ran it just before the semester started and just before they decided to up Anaconda to 3.7 and cause numerous problems. So let's go ahead and run this, see what happens. TensorFlow backend, that is awesome. You should see this output 1.12.0. If you're seeing this, you're golden. It's installed. This how powerful is your machine. If you weren't able to install PS utils because maybe you installed the full Anaconda, this part might not work, but let's go ahead and run this. This will show you how powerful your machine is. This is the end of this installation. You've got this set up. If you found this interesting, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. If you run into some problems, Google's your best friend, or let me know in the comments section, and I will see what I can do for you. Thank you very much.